Welcome back to the channel, Bridging the Gap Student to Engineer, where STEM professionals provide advice to students. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into a school. Today's school is Cornell University. This was based on a request, and so I encourage you to request school deep dives if you're looking at different schools, considering whether or not your student should go to this one or that one once you've gotten accepted. This is a great way to calculate ROIs and those types of things. So with that, let's get started. So I made my way to the Cornell Outcomes dashboard. I did this through a quick Google search for Cornell University student outcomes. So the way it's laid out is a dashboard. So I need to start at the top with some filters for what I'm looking for. I'm going to keep the 22-23 data both there because I think it'll give us a little bit bigger data set to look at. I'm just looking at bachelor's, and I'm looking at engineering school. So I'm going to just filter that far. Of course, if you know what your specific major is that you want to do, you can definitely come in here and look at the different majors, but we're going to keep it at a general level. And just to make sure, I'm going to pick a Bachelor's of Science to make sure that we're just at that bachelor's level, which I already filtered for. So one thing that Cornell has front and center is their salary statistics. I'm going to skip them for now just so that we can go through a little bit more of the data and look at where the students end up and those types of things, and then maybe come back to the salary data. All right, so what they are saying is that they have data for 1,098 students who received a bachelor's from Cornell University in engineering in the years 22 and 23. So 54% were employed within 6 months of graduation, 42% in grad school. Usually what we focus on is these seeking employment, seeking acceptance through grad school. This is like the students who did not have a positive outcome in those first couple months after school. So what you can see here is about 3% of the students that graduated did not have a positive outcome within the first 6 months. That is a little bit higher than some other schools, but very good number. I say it's a little bit higher because I think Purdue is like a 98.5%, something like that, but it is a really good rate. One thing that stuck out to me is this ratio, the 54% employed versus 42% grad school. A lot of the engineering schools we've been looking at have about like a 25% go to grad school. For 42% of engineering students to go immediately into grad school after their bachelor's is pretty significant. And I think this highlights what Cornell kind of sells themselves as. They're an Ivy League school, they focus on research, and they're attracting people who want to continue that kind of work. A lot of times I'll say that there are schools that create engineers and there are schools that create grad students. I would say that Cornell, just based on looking at this and some of the other data that's available, they're a little bit more on they create grad student side of things. They're going to be a school where you're going to have a lot more opportunities for research, and maybe that's something that you will decide that you enjoy. Most engineers in industry are not in research. So a school that's going to teach you hands-on how to go make something happen is going to be a school that's going to have a lot more focus on creating engineers rather than grad students. Okay, so this is similar data. Again, it's just broken out by year, but you can see that each year they're reasonably similar outcomes. Another thing I like to look at is the location. So what Cornell provides you is the employment and grad schools together into one map. A lot of the schools are providing you that separately. Typically what we've seen a lot for engineering grad schools is Texas and California for those destinations. Um, so we'll just assume that a few of the counts on those states are grad school, but not really a huge difference. So what strikes me about this distribution here, um, well, first of all, they making it a little bit hard to see like what percent go to different states. Um, so Cornell is in upstate New York. 250 of the 488 students that are represented in this data have stayed in state. Um, and then a big chunk have gone to California. Other than that, there are quite a number of states with a few students that have gone there. This is not quite the wide swath of locations that we see on a number of other grad schools. I don't think that looking at this, you would say that Cornell is a regional school, or, that you couldn't go anywhere you wanted. A lot of these states that don't have graduates going to them are states with smaller populations, so not necessarily big places to attract people. So reading this, I would say it is obvious that more than half of the Cornell grads stay in state, at least immediately after they graduate, but they do have the opportunity to go all over the country. Okay, so let's go to the employment tab, and we're just going to check that all of those filters that we had before are still on there, which is great. Okay, so what Cornell gives you is the same map as we looked before, except for this is specific for employment rather than combined with grad school. Again, there's a pretty large chunk that stayed in New York, not quite as high of a percent as we saw in the combined chart. And then again, a number going to California, pretty big chunk. But grads go pretty much all over the place. So if you just look at all of these different states, you can see that Cornell grads appear to be welcome all over the US, which is great. Okay, so employment sectors. This is what kind of industry you might expect to work in if you get a degree from Cornell. Typically, I take this as what types of companies are recruiting at the school, what types of industries is the school teaching to. So there's a lot of technology, a pretty big chunk of financial services. These two are not super common in engineering employment sectors with other schools. I'm not seeing aerospace. I'm not seeing some of those larger sectors that we've seen on some other schools. Architecture, design, and construction is very small, so if that was something that you wanted to do, Cornell may not be your best choice to go into. Government is very, very small. But on the other hand, there's biotechnology, pharmaceutical type area, although it is only 5%, it is there, and that's not always on these charts for schools. A lot of times the consulting and professional practice are engineers that go into a engineering consulting firm, and those are quite often people who are doing technical engineering to begin with, a little bit more aligned with what they did in school rather than applying what you did in school to other things. So a pretty good distribution, but definitely some areas that are not very heavy or not very big. Okay. So one thing I don't like about the way Cornell has laid this out is they have all employers for all of the students that they got results from. They're in alphabetical order. They're not in order by number. So to find out what the big employers are, you kind of have to just scroll through and see. So Amazon is listed here 3 different times. That number, if you add them all up, ends up being the largest employer as we go through. So I'll just click through these so you can see. Another thing that I did notice when I was looking through here is quite a number of employers only hired one Cornell grad in these 2 years that we're looking at. And to me, that indicates there's not a large presence of a lot of these companies where they are coming and hiring up 40 grads because they really, really like the school and they really want the people from the school. I also wonder how strong the employment office is, whether they have strong relationships with some of these companies or if they just leave it up to the school, the students more. Microsoft is big here. You can see Meta. Um, so I'm just continuing to click through to let you know what's on here. I did see some of the big consulting firms. There is a SpaceX in here, so there's a little bit of presence there. But again, not any huge numbers. I think Microsoft and Amazon were the two biggest. Those are obviously large companies, but they haven't been featured in a lot of the other schools that we've been looking at. So something to consider. I think I would ask more questions about Cornell's relationships with employers and how they go about connecting students with employers. Okay. Um, yeah, an interesting thing is here, they actually listed the nonprofit employers. That isn't something I've seen before, but good to know and understand that definitely the nonprofit sector is a great place to go. Okay, so this is where the data visualization gets kind of cool in my opinion because I love data. For each of the main sectors, they've given you a dot chart of all of the different um, starting salaries that are in each sector. Now, when you start school, you're probably not going to say, I'm, going to get X degree because I want to go into Y sector. Sometimes that's the case for financial services, for example, but usually not with an engineering degree. So if you, for example, knew that you wanted to do biotech or pharmaceuticals and you were going to get a degree related to that, you could come in here and just look at what you would expect for salary. So it looks like the median, which is what I always suggest going with, the median is half the people are making less and half are making more. 76%, 76,000 right out of school, which is pretty decent and pretty standard for engineering degrees right now. Construction's a little bit less. That is pretty typical, not significantly less. And then there are some outliers out here. I mean, people starting making, $250,000 is not normal and not something that you should expect, but definitely something that's great to see that students are getting that. Okay, so this awesome colory chart here is called a stand key diagram. What this shows is the destination of students with various degrees. So on the left, what they're showing you is, okay, so they're showing you what degree the student received. And then if you follow these lines to the other side, you will see where they ended up working. So if I was a student with a mechanical engineering degree, it looks like the two most common paths are design and consumer products. But some of the graduates went to consulting, and some went to manufacturing, and some went to what they call other. So you can go through each of these and excuse me, and see the paths where the graduates ended up. Civil engineers are either in design or construction, chemical in process systems, information science and technology all went into software development, where the majors of computer science went into a couple different areas. Now, another thing that you can tell from this is that there are far more graduates in computer science than there are in the other majors. And so if you're going to go to Cornell for an engineering degree and you want to major in civil, for example, this is a very, very small cohort of engineers or students going through this program or graduating from the program, while if you were in computer science, you would be surrounded by quite a number of people. So something to consider, sometimes you'll look at a school that seems very big, but the program that you're looking at is small, and you can still get that one-on-one hands-on support from the professors if you're in those schools. So if you have any questions about how to read this or questions about the outcomes, feel free to leave a comment, reach out, and I can provide a little bit more explanation. Okay. So this how job was found, again, each of these have a slightly different number of students because they've had a different number of students answer them. But this goes to what I was asking earlier about so many students going to different employers. So a lot of employers hired one student rather than a chunk of students. And when you look at how the jobs were found, the vast majority of students found a job online. That does not mean that they got it through even the handshake that Cornell sets up for them. They didn't get it through personal contacts. They didn't get it through a Cornell-sponsored career fair. So this indicates to me, or reinforces the data that we saw earlier, that the career services at the university is not the primary source of jobs for students after graduation. It is something to consider. I expect that a lot of Cornell students are go-getters and they're going to go find their own find their own jobs, and that is great. But definitely something to consider if you are somebody who would like to have companies come to you and the Career Center helping you out with a lot of different postings and a lot of career fairs that are going to get you a lot of opportunities. It looks like they're a little bit weak in this area. Okay. They do have some data down here at the bottom about the timing of the job offer. I thought that was going to be very interesting, but it looks to me like the data is incorrect because all of them are listed as after 5 months after graduation. And that doesn't seem accurate, so we will skip that over. Okay, so that's Cornell. I'm not going to go into the education piece. That is really about what grad schools they go to. But what I will go back to now is those salary statistics we talked about in the beginning. So I'll just highlight those quickly. The mean, median, and mode, for those who aren't aware of what all those are, mean is the average. You usually talk about that as just the total divided by the number that you have, and you get an average. The mean is can be heavily influenced by outliers. So the one student that was making $250,000 a year could definitely skew this. The median is the point where half of the students are making less and half are making more. And then the mode is the most common, 110, with the range being the minimum and the maximum. This salary statistics is far and away above what I've seen anywhere else. The fact that all of these numbers pretty much are in the 100,000s is significantly higher than a lot of other schools. Some schools, when we've been comparing them, have said, well, a lot of the school students go to major metropolitan areas. Maybe a lot of them go to New York City, so they'd pay more. But even with those numbers are like in the 90 range, not in the 100 and 110 range. So Cornell's doing something right. I will say that the number of students that are graduating in computer science is significant, so that may have something to do with it. But something to look at, and I think if you are looking at an engineering at Cornell that is not computer science, I strongly recommend that you look at the specific major or discipline that you're looking at rather than looking at the overall, because I think that the small numbers in civil and some of the other engineerings are going to be um, overshadowed by some of those larger salaries. So that's Cornell University Deep Dives. Let me know if you have any questions, concerns, if there was something that I missed on there that you'd like to get a little bit more information for. We can definitely look at that again. If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking around. And please like, subscribe, share with friends, and request more videos.